Not to worry.
You are on.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Mr. Toastmaster. I mean, Mr. Evaluator. So, while the pandemic raged on, 61% of employees worked remotely, 53% of whom had transitioned to working from home since COVID started, basically. And that's according to Salesforce research. And by March of this year, it was pretty obvious that we were going to continue on this same vein, that a lot of people were going to continue to work remotely. There was a survey done by HR consultancy Mercer, and according to that, 87% of 700 employer respondents were already anticipating that remote work would be part of their, or some kind of workplace flexibility was going to be part of their post-pandemic strategy. And most of those who anticipated this figured they would go with some sort of a hybrid model after the pandemic. And it's like, really, why wouldn't they decide to have some sort of remote work incorporated, right? Because a half-time employee that comes into the office only half of the time apparently saves a company about $11,000 according to global workplace analytics. And really, who's longing for their commutes, right? I mean, how many people are missing getting on those trains and the buses and running all around? Nah, that's one part of office working that people are happy to limit. So today I'm going to talk, because I love innovation, I'm going to talk to you about 3 challenges and some companies and some researchers that are coming up with some solutions or partial solutions to those challenges. So let's start with challenge 1. Productivity versus work-life balance. So I'm sure everyone here, how many of you know someone that checks their work at all hours? Toastmaster, can you tell me how many people are raising their hands?
No, because I have you in speaker view.
Oh,
Many are raising their hands.
yeah, I kind of figured. We all know those folks. And Microsoft's Work Trend Index survey from January of this year says that 50% of people reply to Microsoft Teams chat messages within just 5 minutes. And as a writer who loves being in that flow state, I was like, whoa, I was horrified by that stat there, because that's stifling creativity when you have to continue to check. So, in order to beat the heat, to go with a summertime metaphor, there are some companies who are setting boundaries and expectations. We have the 10 Slack agreements of Buffer. Buffer is a social media scheduling platform. And they are recommending to display downtime on statuses, make full use of Slack profiles so people know when to expect a response and when not to, and avoiding constantly checking messages. And they're encouraging people to look at the end of the workday as a good time to respond to messages rather than all freaking day long, right? So the next challenge, fostering deeper, more genuine relationships when you're remote. According to Harvard Business Review, about 30% of companies who are training employees in some way, shape, or form about remote work. And they're more likely to focus when they're training on policies or tech rather than any sort of relationship building skills. And so I found this gem in an interview from Yale Insights. There's a company called Hunu, not Hulu, Hunu, Hunu, and their AI service is urging workers to take seemingly small actions, like speaking up in a meeting or asking for some sort of input, complimenting coworkers' accomplishments. And when you time these little nudges to happen at the right moments, when you have AI that knows how to do that, you'll make purposeful moments of connection feel more normal and more safe. And I thought that was fascinating because, I mean, AI is here to stay for better or worse. So I thought that sort of innovation was an interesting way to actually put the human back into AI. And the third challenge is managing employees remotely. I mean, let's face it, how many managers have ever been trained to manage people who aren't in the office? And again, HBR, Harvard Business Review, is saying that 40% of one particular survey's respondents suggested consistent, frequent check-ins as an optimal remote management strategy.
1 minute.
So that's why HBR is suggesting that we take individual and team time both to actually talk about the personal and to schedule one-on-one meetings and consistent check-ins. So in conclusion, whether it's balancing work with personal life, strengthening business relationships, or being a better manager, we can always find a little innovation to unstifle what might be a stifling situation of working remotely and maybe not being in as regular contact with our colleagues. Back to you, Toastmaster.
Thank you so much, Krista. Something that we have not done in this club that we might consider if there's time. I don't know if you want to try and do it today. What some clubs do is after a speaker has finished, we just take 1 minute to write some notes to that speaker. Write some notes. We'll post at the email address in the chat. Or did you know that if you log into Pathways, there actually is a place where you can leave feedback for a speaker? Were you aware of that? If you log into, well, I'll show you next time how to do that. However, for this time, let's just take 30 seconds and write some notes to Krista about her speech. And Mr. Timer, can you give us 30 seconds?
You bet.
You can put them in the chat or you can send Krista an email. Krista, could I ask you to put your email in the chat? Is that possible?
Sure, just a minute.
Super. Thank you.
And people are already typing in the chat as well. So that's helpful.
Okay. Our second speaker today is Karen Vanderlyn. And to evaluate Karen's speech, we have Heather Pardon. So Heather, I'm going to turn it over to you. Would you please introduce your speaker, Karen?
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, and welcome fellow Toastmasters and guests. Karen Vanderlyn is most happy to be back at Toastmasters after a whirlwind few weeks of travel, high school graduations, her parents temporarily moving in, and a killer head cold. That sounds like a rough few weeks. This is, Karen's working on a level 1 project. It's the evaluation and feedback project, which is, I believe, in her dynamic leadership pathway. This is part 2 of that project. So she's delivering her icebreaker speech for the second time. And she would like to thank Kristen for her valuable feedback on her first speech. So with her speech, The Calm After the Storm, please join me in welcoming Karen to our stage.
Thank you, Heather and Toastmasters and honored guests. And as you can tell, my cold is going on a little bit as still. So if I start coughing, I really apologize, everyone. So here we go. Life's a journey, not a destination. We have all heard this expression, haven't we? It's cliche and it's trite. But the thing about cliches, there's a little bit of truth in all of them. I always like to picture my journey as being a boat out on the ocean. I'm trying to get from point A to point B. And along the way, there's going to be some storms, there's going to be some rough weather, but there's also going to be some calmness and a lot of beauty around me. So we're going to take a little sail through my life right now, and in my icebreaker speech right now called The Calm After the Storm. So to start off with, just like anybody else, we start off on a calm, clear day and we're going with some smooth sailing. My life was always very busy, to say the least. The wind started to pick up and the water got choppier as I got into junior high and high school, when I was given the information that there was no money for me to go to college. As the oldest of 5 children, and at the time, the only girl, chores in my house were assigned by gender rather than by anything else. So where my brothers used to get off scot-free and not have to do a lot, on top of my regular life of having to go to school and, do well, I also had to take on the brunt of babysitting and doing chores around my house, chores that my brothers never had to do, like the dishes and the laundry and vacuuming and things like that. As I learned that there was no money for college, I started to get more and more involved in different activities and working different jobs. The tree branches bent a little bit and the waves got a little bit rougher as I journeyed through this part of my storm. I got very busy in extracurricular activities at school. I worked my way through and worked 2 jobs and earned all the money that I could so that I would be able to go to college. I was going to have it all. I was going to have the house, and I was going to have the husband, and I was going to have the career, and I was going to have the family, and nothing was going to take me off my course. I managed to get into college and I managed to work my way through. Now, one of the things about this part of the storm is that there were calm days and there were crazy days. Some days I was just smooth sailing, looking at the weather, and other days I was bailing my craft as fast as I could to get the water out, just trying to keep my head and my ship above water. I was very busy in college as well. Not only was I working to earn money for school, I was taking on several extracurricular activities. I was an RA, I was a tutor, and somewhere in there, I also happened to meet the love of my life, which took up quite a bit of time in college as well. When I graduated in 1991, the recession had hit. It was right after a desert storm, and there were not many jobs to be had for somebody with just a bachelor's degree. Why hire someone with no experience when you can hire someone with a lot of experience for less money? So it was a rough couple of years in there. My storm kept going. The storm waxed and waned for those couple of years while I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. But there were so many wonderful parts in there as well. Number one being marrying the love of my life. One of the things that I've noticed in this part of my life is that the storm didn't seem to be that bad at that point in time. Everything was going wonderfully, especially when I found out I was about to have my first child. But then, like storms do, the wind started to creep in, the waves started to crash, and the branches started to bend. Because while I was having my first pregnancy, I also experienced my first miscarriage. And then 4 months later, my second miscarriage. Now at this point, the storm was crashing. I was told there was a possibility that I might not even be able to have children. well, that was unacceptable to me. I decided that I was going to see new doctors and do whatever it took because I was going to have it all. I was going to have my family. I was going to have my career. I was going to have everything that I wanted to have in my life. One of the wonderful things about finding my new doctor was that he was able to do everything that he needed to do. And I was very, very happy to carry my first child to term. But of course, that storm wasn't going to let up. Not only did I had a very difficult delivery, I had to be rushed into emergency surgery after my first outborn child was born. And for 4 hours, I didn't get to see her because I was having emergency surgery and recovering afterwards. And I had been so focused all this time about having this perfect career and this perfect family and this perfect life. And it was all gone. It was all gone. And my ship was starting to sink. But then 4 hours later, when I was in my room and they wheeled that baby in and they put her into my arms, everything was clear, kind of like the eye of the hurricane. And for a minute, nothing else mattered. I didn't want to know about the career and I didn't care about the home. I wanted my family and I wanted to be a mom. And that is the only thing I wanted to be from there on in. 3 years later, I was blessed with my second daughter. 2 years after that, my son, a very unexpected surprise because, you know, storms are unexpected at times too, aren't they? But my storm kept going. We had wonderful, wonderful, beautiful periods. And then we had awful, awful, terrible storms. And my life just got faster and faster. 3 different children, different ages, different interests, different passions, and letting them do all of the things that they wanted to do to become the people that they were meant to be took up every minute of my time while working 2 part-time jobs because I wanted to be home as much as I could for my kids, to encourage them as much as I could, but I also needed to pay the bills. And since I wasn't going to have that big fancy career anymore, I needed to pay the bills any way I could. Well, as you heard in my introduction, my third child graduated high school last week. All of that craziness, all of that chaos, all of those storms have suddenly cleared. And I realize now that this is the calm after the storm. What do I want to be when I grow up? What am I going to do now? What am I going to do now that the focus is solely on myself? Where am I going to steer my craft? Well, I'm about to set my sails and find out. Thank you very much.
Mr. Timer, could you give us 1 minute, please, while we give Karen some feedback? And hopefully, Karen, you're all right. My goodness, imagine you got right through that whole speech and then the coughing started.
I was holding that cough the last 2 minutes. I swear that's why I'm over time.
No worries. So please give Karen some comments and feedback in the chat or by email. Thank you, Mr. Timer. And now for the impromptu part of our meeting, our table topics master. And we did have Sherry stepping in for Andrea if Andrea wasn't able to make it. However, Andrea, I see your smiling face. Are you prepared to do our table topics today?
Absolutely. And I was tending to my little ones. And so that was why, because it's 7 o'clock here. So, but I am ready to go. So good evening, good morning, wherever you are, fellow Toastmasters. And thank you, Madam Toastmaster. So with our theme, friends, sun, sand, and sea, sounds like a fantastic summer to me. And I think most of us really love summer, but since the pandemic has had us very stifled with all these restrictions and we couldn't do anything last year, I think most of us are very hopeful for fun and amazing barbecue gatherings with our friends, lively music.